I think at the beginning of the semester, I told you, thank God the 4th of July is on a weekend because it always gets in the way. And then with one fewer days and the same amount of material to be covered, it can wreak havoc. Well, somebody clued me in. Actually, the VP of instruction, he's retired, but I see him every once in a while, and we're talking. And he said, "Oh, well, at least you get Monday off." I said, "What do you mean Monday off? Monday's what's Monday?" He says it's the 5th of July. I said, "Yeah, right. When's the 5th of July a holiday?" He says, "When it follows the 4th of July." So I looked at the school's calendar. In making my calendar and syllabus up, I just use a desktop calendar uh, that's here. It's a nice one, but it doesn't mark the holidays that the Saddleback College wants to have necessarily. And they have Monday down as a holiday. I thought it through. What can I do? One, I could hold a meeting on Monday on a voluntary basis, record it, and then everybody else's leisure, they could look at the recording. I don't know that a recording ever is as good as having the opportunity to ask a live question, though. Well, okay, maybe I would do that. But then what about the lab? On Monday, we start the circulatory system, okay, the third practicum material. There's no way in hell I'm going to start a new lab uh, quarter or section without as many people there as possible. I would lose so many people. I think grades would suffer, or if they didn't suffer, it would only be because you had to work twice as hard. And I don't think that's fair. Okay. I don't like all these holidays. Okay. Uh, but there it is. And some people have probably made plans. The school doesn't insist that you be here on an online class. Who does actually anyway? I mean, we we have a new holiday now, right?
Juneteenth. Yep.
Juneteenth. I think the idea of Juneteenth uh, goes well for many people, including me. There's always people who don't like anything. Okay, so I don't have a problem with Juneteenth, but it's another national holiday. If we keep having more and more national holidays, we won't be doing anything. Okay, keep June tenth, okay, and get rid of that archaic, old-fashioned Columbus Day. Who the hell needs it? The guy killed the Indians. He ravaged the Caribbean on 4 separate trips. Who the hell needs to celebrate him? So put in Juneteenth and get rid of the other guy.
I can work with that.
If we keep on going, we'll have 365 days of holidays. Well, if we have any enemies in the world, they're going to love that. Okay, our productivity would really go down. Okay, so here's my solution, and I'm making it. I should bring up the school's calendar for you. I can't do that without going to share screen. I'm not quite ready to do that. This week, tomorrow, we have the practicum. Okay, you're all ready for that. On Monday, it will be a holiday. However, by Monday, or over the weekend, I will post all of the material for the week for those who wish to read it, study it ahead of time, feel that they're not going to have to pedal faster to catch up. Okay. it'll be your choice, but you'll have all the information on the weekend for the week itself. Okay. Now, the 5th, though, is officially a holiday. There won't be Confer Zoom. Okay. You can visit, of course, Canvas, and you can see in the modules all the information if you want to get ahead. On Tuesday, there will be a lecture, and there will be a lab. The lab will be the first lab of the circulatory system, the new material. Okay. On Wednesday, there will be a lecture. Now, we've got short of the lecture on Monday. So I either have to double up on a lecture or pull another stunt. Okay. So on Wednesday, there'll be a lecture. And on Wednesday, there'll be lab. On Thursday, there would normally be what?
Lecture test.
Lecture test number 2. But I think we all know from looking at the lecture test and practicum results that we just had that the lecture test pulls you down a bit. And I don't want that to happen because you had to double time. So the lecture test is going to move. The lecture test is going to be Monday. Okay. I'll be sending you an email to that effect. And that Monday, I'm looking at it here. Monday the 4th. Oh, I'm in the wrong damn month. Here we are. Monday the 12th. The lecture test will be now Monday the 12th. That will give you the entire weekend to study for it. I know entire weekend for people who work or have other activities doesn't mean entire weekend. Also, though, that's the only date that's changing. The practicum number 3 will still be Thursday the 15th, 3 days later. You'll have all the material. We'll have plenty of meetings. And you will have that weekend before. And you will have to find out how to share your time between going from the lecture to the lab material and how much you need of each. Comments?
What time did you say that the lecture test would be taking place on Monday?
Our standard time, 1 o'clock.
Okay. And then we would have class afterwards?
After a lecture test, we always have class.
Cool.
Yeah. We want to keep up the pace. We are losing a day. We're losing the 5th. And I do have to increase the material on a daily basis. I could double it up all in one day. And in our tiredness, if that happens, not accomplish very much. Or I can add a quarter to each of the days of material and catch us up gradually, but get us there before the test.
Charlie, for the practicum test on Thursday,
Yes.
it's going to be about the muscle types and structure, muscle contraction, digestive system, and the urinary system.
No. It's only going to be on the muscles.
Only on the muscles. Oh, yay.
Okay. First off, we haven't even covered the urinary system yet. We have finished. No, we haven't. We got one more lecture today, right now, on the digestive system. We'll finish that. But that's not even on the practicum. The only thing on this practicum is muscles. Name the muscle, give the action, give the insertion, give the origin, and a few text questions that I mentioned the other day, possibly coming off of what are the four quadriceps, what are the three hamstring muscles, okay, and everything that is in our material, in our handouts, but nothing else. It's strictly muscles, just like the first one was strictly bones. What else? Anything? Getting a
I
lot of questions today. Good. Randy.
I've been using the pictures in chapter 11 just to kind of diversify the photos that I'm looking at to identify muscles. Do you think it would be beneficial to read through chapter 11 before the exam, or would it be wasting my time?
You're wasting your time.
Okay, thank you.
Is it beneficial? If you had more time, yes, it would be. But you don't have that much time to waste. Okay? I really suggest that you hone in on the material that I've given you. That's where every question is coming from.
Thank you.
And is chapter 11 going to be what the next lecture test is going to cover?
I haven't assigned chapter 11.
Correct.
So I haven't assigned it, and I'm not prepared to answer it here without seeing my chart in front of me. I do have a flow chart of the chapters that I asked. Chapter 11 does not seem to come into mind. Do you happen to see the title of chapter 11?
Do I happen to see it?
Yeah, you have the
Oh, no, not right now.
Okay, you're just throwing out a number.
Yep.
It's muscles of the body.
Huh?
It's muscles of the body. So
Oh no, don't even read it. Don't even read it. That's a reference work.
yeah.
Okay. This is well, I would call it a basic class. However, the amount of material we put into this class far exceeds what most college classes have for human anatomy. Okay, so even though I would consider it basic, uh, I think things like chapter 11, a physician could actually backtrack and look through them. Those aren't for you. Those, if I thought they were, I would assign them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good, good. Okay. Let's see. Just let me do something here. And
Charlie, one more question. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, that's fine. Go ahead.
So I was studying and reviewing the muscles of the cat yesterday, and I noticed that many of them were were pictures from the human musculature.
Right.
Test, will they be pictured from the human musculature as well? Like,
Yesterday, we went over all of the pictures from the human musculature, and
right.
they will all be on the test, or could all be on the test. When you look at the cat musculature, it goes down to approximately question or muscle number 48. And then things like psoas major pops in, and it's a human model again. And it's
Yeah.
a human model down for the face and everything else. Well, that's an overlap with the human material. There's nothing new there. There's nothing that you actually have to study twice. Okay, so as you go to, I'm going to go through that today. So
Okay.
we'll come up around to it once again. Okay, let me go ahead and get the screen shared. It's stalling for a second. There it goes. why it does that. I will put out an email to you guys about what I just said. So if you actually look at Confer Zoom, you don't have to. You're already here. You're here. I didn't schedule anything for Monday, okay? But we're right back in there on Tuesday. Since the practicums are 2 weeks apart, you're always really studying material from 2 modules. Right now, we need to do lecture. And here, no, I don't want to do that. Okay, the one I want is this one. I'll change the date on it. Okay, so here was 628, 629 that we just done. This one needs to be 630 to make sense. The dates on the modules here are a good source to lead you to the right place. When I open this up, it won't say 630. It'll say probably the last date I gave the lecture. We're going to look at the cross section of the GI tract. That means we take the esophagus, cut it across. We're not going to cut it at the top of the esophagus because that's different than the bottom or distal part of the esophagus. The esophagus is under the control of skeletal muscle for the first couple of inches, and after that, smooth muscle. So you can swallow something, and if it's too hot or anything, you can spit it back up real quick. But once it gets past the skeletal muscle section and gets into the smooth muscle, it's on a slide to the stomach all the way. Now the stomach may rebel against something too, though, and then you have a condition called occasionally antiperistalsis. Peristalsis being the movement of something towards the stomach, antiperistalsis being movement away from the stomach, most commonly called vomiting. This is a diagrammatic cross section. I've got some that are photos for you as well. Along the length of the GI tract, a cross section reveals that it's composed of 4 distinct layers. Okay. Here's the lumen. The lumen is the cavity inside. It looks circular here, but it's really tubular coming out towards you. The food and stuff will come out through the lumen and pass through the lumen. There's 4 layers. One here just by color. What color is that? Is that pink?
Yes.
Okay. What color is this? Pinker?
Pinker.
Okay. This one is stippled, and I don't know what to call that. This almost looks woven. Okay. I don't think I would have drawn it this way, but neither would you. But it does make sense. It's also been drawn with a compass so that it's perfect. The inner layer is the tunica mucosa. They've used in this drawing the word mucosa only. When we talk about mucosa, we always mean the inner or the lining layer. Okay, this is the mucosa. Tunica mucosa, probably best to say the whole thing. This is going to be subdivided and composed of 3 parts. Fortunately for us, the other 3 layers are not composed of 3 parts. This is the only one. You notice the zigzagging into the lumen? Looks like little fingers sticking into the lumen. These little guys are villi, and I'll have another picture of that for you. The villus increases the surface area of the tunica mucosa wall, much more increased because of these little finger-like projections coming in. These are not folds. These are like fingers. These are like bristles on a brush coming in, and they all have digestive and absorptive properties. Here are the so-called substructures of the tunica mucosa. We're talking about this layer here, which I call pink, but now I think I'd call it peach. I don't know. First, you have an epithelial layer. The epithelial layer is the layer that is in actual contact with the lumen itself. These are cells that you'll learn later are called simple columnar cells. They have the shape somewhat of fingers. Simple, each one single. Columnar, your fingers are columnar shaped as well. These simple columnar cells that haven't been shown well to you yet, they will be in a moment, are called microvilli as well. The microvilli line the villus. The villus is the finger-like projection that you see going in. Think of your finger as a villus sticking into the lumen. Now, with the other hand or mind, touch the outside of the finger. You're touching the outside of the villus. In the very outside wrapping, where you might get a finger cut, a paper cut, that is your epithelial layer. Epithelial covers are lines. If it's buried deep inside, it is not epithelium. Okay, here is a villus. There are 3 of them in this model. The cells around the outside of the villus are the microvilli. It's labeled here, continuous here, and here it's pointing to one villus. Villi is the plural. Underneath the epithelial layer of microvilli, you have a set of capillaries, tiny, tiny arteries and veins that will absorb the nutrients from the small intestine. Only the small intestine has villi. The large intestine does not, no other part, not the stomach, nothing else. Just the small intestine has these absorptive structures. The capillaries that do the absorption underneath the microvilli are called the lamina propria. Lamina propria. that shows in this villus. If I cut it at a different level, I might expose on the other side here this structure called the lacteal. The lacteal absorbs lipids. Again, take the tuna fish sandwich from yesterday or peanut butter sandwich, and the lipid is emulsified, and when it's small enough, it can be absorbed across the microvilli and will flow into the lacteal.
What does lamina propria do again?
Lamina propria will absorb everything else, sometimes some water, but usually protein and carbohydrate, sugar.
Okay.
So here's the 3 layers of the villus, okay? The microvilli, the outside, the lamina propria inside. We don't count the lacteal as a layer. The third is down below. You have a muscular layer. This is the muscularis mucosa. The muscularis mucosa runs circularly this way. Now, if the lumen is up at the top, obviously it has to be because the villi are pointing into it. The muscularis mucosa will go around the whole structure. The purpose of the muscularis mucosa is in contracting, it forces or helps the movement of the contents of the veins to take the absorbed material away. And where will they take it away to? The absorbed material from the small intestine enters into the pathway to the liver, into the hepatic portal vein. Absorbed nutrients from the small intestine, absorbed by the villus and microvilli and the lamina propria, is suspect. It could be poisonous. It could be partially toxic or mildly toxic. And rather than put it into general circulation throughout the whole body, first it is taken to the liver to be looked at. This is sort of, think about it, going to the airport and everybody funnels through the metal detector and everything else. Okay. They want to check on it first before you get into the general population. This is an actual picture inside of the duodenum. It may not make sense at first, but follow my little pointer here. And the lumen is here and disappears here. It keeps on going. These things, nice and shiny, aren't they? These are villi. These are the villi. The second substructure is the lamina propria. The first was the microvilli or the epithelial layer. Okay. The lacteal is also embedded in the lamina propria and takes up lipid. Nothing at all new here. It's all been said a moment ago. The second layer is the tunica submucosa. Backing up for a moment, the tunica submucosa is this one. I think you told me it was pink. You can see it's a bit thicker. The absorption happens in the tunica mucosa. This is the tunica submucosa. It is primarily connective tissue. In other words, it binds the outer inner layer, the tunica mucosa, to the next layer that we haven't yet named. It's the tunica muscularis. It's mostly connective tissue. It is highly vascularized, meaning it has blood moving through it and helps take that material that the first layer absorbed to the liver. The third layer is the tunica muscularis. This is smooth muscle, completely smooth muscle. You want the small intestine to gyrate, to pulse, because that helps move material along. What else helps move material along? More material arriving pushes the rest further along. Okay? But you need the tunica muscularis to really help out. Remember the third layer of the tunica mucosa was the muscularis mucosa. This is a thin layer, very thin layer, not to be confused with the thicker layer here, the tunica mucosa. The tunica mucosa has two types of smooth muscle. On the inside, although the entire thing looks just the same, on the inside, it constricts in a circular manner. This is circular, smooth muscle. On the outer side, the back side, this is longitudinal smooth muscle. So the tunica muscularis can not only squeeze or constrict the GI tract, but it can also shorten it and then release it again and push it forward. This helps greatly in moving the contents. The serosa is primarily a protective layer, the tunica serosa, protective layer, and also it interconnects, although it doesn't show it here, it will in a moment. It interconnects any part of the small intestine with other parts of the small intestine. Okay, they're not just lying in your abdomen haphazardly. There's a logic, I guess, to the way that they're put in and held together so that this will swing out, circle another cross section and another cross section to hold everything together. I like that picture. Okay, so here are the second through fourth layers. The first being the epithelial layer or the tunica mucosa, then the tunica submucosa, then the tunica muscularis, and finally the tunica serosa. The tunica serosa is sometimes referred to as the adventitia. The term adventitia usually is relegated to high school classes, but it creeps in every once in a while in a book, and you should be familiar with the interchangeability of tunica serosa and adventitia. Now we're going to look at serous membranes. The tunica serosa is a serous membrane. Serous membranes are broad, often expansive coverings over the body cavities and the internal organs. It secretes a fluid to lubricate the viscera. And here are some major ones that I want to point out. Now, that description can leave you scratching your head. Serous membranes are broad, often expansive coverings. Think for a second. Got two steaks, not edible steaks, garden steaks. Pound them into the ground about 2 feet apart. Now, with your best saran wrap, okay, or cling wrap, go around one steak a couple times. Now stretch the saran wrap to the second steak and go around it if you can, so that you have a membrane between the two that also joins the two. That's a serous membrane. Think of the abdominal cavity. Mentally get rid of all the organs except the kidney that are in there. Now, maybe you have a model. A lot of models you can eviscerate quickly. Take your saran wrap and coat the inside of the abdomen. That separates the abdominal cavity from areas that are potentially infectious. These membranes, in this case saran wrap, also extend into the cavity and surround all of the organs to hold them into place. Now, if you mentally saw it or can see it now, that hollowed out abdominal cavity, with the exception of the kidneys, you cover everything and you cover the kidneys as well. The kidneys then are on the other side. The kidneys are not in the abdominal cavity and never were. The kidneys are said to be retroperitoneal, behind the peritoneum. That's important if you are having a kidney transplant or somebody's donating a kidney, going through the back or side to retrieve the kidney allows you to get the kidney out without entering into the abdominal cavity. A prime source of a problem in hospitals is infection. And if you can avoid going into the abdominal cavity, then you do it. Okay. Of course, if you have to have a gallbladder operation, you have to take the added risk of infection. And they have, of course, antibiotics and stuff like that on hand to try to ward that off. But it's a lot easier not to have to worry about infection in transplanting a kidney. The kidney is behind the peritoneum. Now, parietal peritoneum. This is a serous membrane. This is the membrane we just talked about that covers the wall of the abdominal pelvic cavity. The visceral peritoneum is actually an extension of the same membrane, but it comes out into the abdominal cavity and surrounds the organs of the abdomen. That's why it's called visceral peritoneum. So if you were, for instance, to touch the outside of the stomach after an incision, you touch the outside of the stomach, you're really not touching stomach yet, you're touching the visceral peritoneum, which may be clear and it may be thin, but it does serve as a safeguard against infection. The parietal pleura. Now imagine your model with the chest cavity, the thoracic cavity, completely gutted. Take out everything. Line it. The lining is the parietal pleura. Parietal pleura. Peritoneum for the abdomen, pleura for the lungs. Now, put the lungs in there. And what else? What else is in the chest? The heart's in there, okay? But we have special names for the parts of the heart. The esophagus is in there. These are lined, and the lungs are covered with the visceral pleura. Most people drawing a picture, especially in grade school, of lungs in a chest will almost have them looking like collapsed balloons in the chest, two lungs. There's no such thing. Those lungs take up all of the space in your chest. If somebody were able to laser you transversely, they're not going to find much open space in you. Yes, there'll be some open space available, I suppose, in the stomach, some open space available in the bladder, but most of your body is filled with something. Around the heart itself, you have touching the heart. Okay. I'm going to skip to number 6, the visceral pericardium. When we bring sheep hearts out, and we are going to study those next, okay, they won't have a big membrane sac around them. But if you touch the heart out of the specimen bin, you lift it up, touch it, you're touching the visceral pericardium. It's very thin, it's very tight to the heart. And then surrounding that, the heart's in a sac. And that sac is the parietal pericardium. In the abdominal cavity.
Charlie?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the visceral pericardium is outside of the parietal pericardium, or the other way around?
Other way around. Parietal is always outside.
All right. Thanks.
Here's the abdominal pelvic cavity here, and it's surrounded by membranes. These are the membranes here. And these cross sections that you see here are intestines. Okay, small intestine. Surrounding the small intestine is the mesentery. Mesentery proper. I'll use the term mesentery proper so many times you won't have to worry about writing it down now. The mesentery proper is really the visceral peritoneum, or peritoneum, as it should be said. Okay, this is what's coming in. The parietal peritoneum is out here. Around the lungs, here's the lung itself. The visceral pleura is on the lung. Outside of the lung is the parietal pleura. In blue, the visceral pleura, then the parietal pleura. There's a small space in between. Those are called pleural cavities. Here it's called a pleural space, but a pleural cavity, I think, is more familiar to us. Here's the heart. Here's the parietal pericardium, and this is the visceral pericardium right on the heart itself, and the space around it is the pericardial sac. Okay, visceral pericardium on the heart, pericardial space or sac in between, parietal pericardium here. There are some other serous membranes. On the liver, you have one that sort of bisects the liver. Okay. This holds the liver to the diaphragm. Can you imagine running around, jogging, or playing football when you're a kid, or even now if you still do? Okay. Without this ligament, this is the falciform ligament. Properly, it should be named something different, because a ligament's supposed to join bone to bone, and this does not. But we have to go with the name that is given and everybody uses. This is the falciform ligament, unique to the liver. It's considered to be a serous membrane. When you stretch the small intestine of a cat, here it is here, here it is here, here it is here, it's going all around. But when you stretch it, you get really a stained glass appearance. And this sort of transparent or semi-transparent, translucent material, this is the mesentery proper. Mesentery proper. When an operation is done on the abdominal area of somebody who's rather large, they may film it. They film it. Why? Because they need to get all of the small intestines back where they were. Otherwise, you're liable to crimp things and accelerate intestinal blockages. If you've ever had abdominal surgery, you may be one that suffers occasionally from an adhesion where the wound heals, but the organ below that was being worked on, it adheres to the inside of the abdominal wall. And at times that can be very uncomfortable if it's just a part of the digestive system. The large intestine is shown here. We talked about it yesterday, and it has to be anchored down as well. Above in the transverse area, ascending area, and descending area, and the sigmoid area, we have membranes, and these are called the mesocolon. They all come together, holding the large intestine and anchoring it back here underneath the pancreas at the abdominal, the wall on the dorsal side of the specimen.
Charlie, the
Yes,
mesocolon anchors the large or small intestine.
this anchors the large intestine,
Thank you.
anchors the colon. The greater omentum, okay, that is an extension off of the lateral surface of the stomach and off of the greater curvature. It stores fat. It insulates it protects from trauma. Here it is here. Here's the stomach. This looks like yellowish to me anyway. Yellowish green maybe. This is the greater omentum. It stores fat, heat. Okay. This term transverse colon, we know that. But what it's indicating is here's some transverse colon showing through. Okay. It is not pointing to this large structure, which is the greater omentum. We also have as a serous membrane, we have the lesser omentum. The lesser omentum attaches to the lesser curvature of the stomach. It also goes to the liver, and it also goes to the back or dorsal body wall. All of that is repeated up here for you. The broad ligament connects the ovaries and oviducts to the body wall. Here's a uterus extending from it's an ovary. It can't just flop around there. It's got to be held in place. And the broad ligament helps to hold it in place. This ligament, which we're not covering, the uterovarian ligament, also stabilizes it. This is part of the broad ligament here. Okay. Here's the fallopian tube. These days, the tendency is to call it oviduct. So it's the broad ligament that stabilizes the ovary. Okay, anybody with any questions? Okay, let me give you a break till 25 after. Okay, 2:25, and I'll be back, and I'll go over cat muscles with those that feel they need that. Okay, and any other questions that you have. Okay. Okay, see you in a bit. Okay.
Hey, Charlie.
Thank you.
Hey, Charlie.
Anybody think of anything in the meantime? Okay, well, that material won't show up until we take our lecture test on the 12th. Our next lecture material will be on the urinary system. That's not an easy one, but you'll have both the Zoom and you have the recording if you need it, and you have the text. You have all those resources. I just read an email during the break. I don't know how many of you have seen it from our president. Does anybody know who the president of the college is?
Is it you?
No, no, I've been there longer than anybody at all at that college. But I'm not the president, and I never would be. I like the classroom better. Anyway, it's Elliot Stern, and I survived 19 college presidents and 20 deans. They're all gone, and I'm still here. Well, uh, this is a good place for me. But anyway, I was reading the email, and don't quote me, please, because I'm not sure I understood what I read either. That's the way he is. And that is that in fall, there's going to be online classes and there's going to be face-to-face. And you have your choice. Now, I don't know how you can have your choice unless he's going to double the number of classes. He doesn't have the money for that. And make half of them online, half the other way. I don't know how he's going to figure out student preferences, how many of them will want to come back onto campus, still having to wear a mask indoors. No, everybody, absolutely everybody, except for people in athletics and dance. They have to be tested for COVID all the time. But they intend to do the live classes, like, and that's great. I put in a phone call right away. I wanted to find out if my class is designated live still, or or what's going on, But right now, the secretaries, and I know that's an archaic term, uh, but you know, uh, I don't find it demeaning to be called teacher. So they're not there. They're at home. They monitor their emails. So that means I need to email them and ask. Maybe I can tell you a little bit more about it when I get an answer, or you'll find out more yourself. Okay. Again, before we go back, any questions? Okay. This is where we were. Can you see the map?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this is where I went. I went to my site so that I could see how the course that I'm teaching is listed. That doesn't affect you or anything. And sometimes, information is less valuable than no information at all. So I really don't know. But I saw this map and I remembered, oh yeah, that's our science building. Some of you have never been in it, and it's been open now for 3 years. It's a really nice building. The only problem is the people who work there may have to walk from here to there to get a pencil. It just takes forever walking around in that thing. But I like the building a lot. Okay. Over here, what building is that?
At the LRC.
LRC. Now, we used to call that library. Okay, and Library Road still runs behind it. It was built in 1965 and has the name of the congressman, James B. Utt. How would you like your name to be? B. Period Utt. Well, that's who it's named after. No one remembers James B. Utt except for his name. How many floors are in that library? I'm going to call it library, sorry.
I'd say 5.
Oh,
Isn't there like 2?
Isn't there 3?
okay. We're getting different answers. How many of you been there?
I
Mike,
have.
you,
A long time ago, like
okay.
3, 2.
I remember going up a bunch of stairs,
Yeah.
and there's an elevator. So I'm gonna say either anywhere from 4, 3 to 4, or 5.
Okay. You're trying to cover all the bases.
I'll say 5 if there's a secret basement downstairs.
It's not a secret basement downstairs.
Janitorial basement.
Yeah.
My
There's
husband
a-
says there's 3 floors.
Huh?
My husband says there's 3 floors. He works there.
3?
Yeah. At the library.
That's what my sister said.
Okay. Even if your husband works there, ask him to check it out. There's 4, as far as I know. I don't know about any secret basement. I was there. I was Saturday dean. They put us to work on Saturday. And as Saturday dean, water pipe broke here, flooded the entire library, and water spilled out over the edge here. It looked like the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. Okay, and we never had any basement to clean up. But boy, the firemen were there all day long. But anyway, I'm telling you, I think that there are 4 levels. First level, ground floor. Second level. And the third level, you don't see it here because it doesn't have windows on this side. But first floor down here's the first floor. It had vending machines and photography classes and things like that. They move around. Here's the second floor, and the third floor is up here. Okay. Here's the 4th floor, and it's not very big. It's this structure from here to here. It's like a large room up on the roof. There's a cantilever right here. Sticks out, and it's meant to disguise the room behind it. Looks like a piece of artwork. Next time, or if ever you're there, take a look up from the trees down here, and you'll see it. It's there. What's in that room? That room was built in 1965, and it was meant to be a safe house. In 1965, there was student unrest on campus. Kent State, if you ever heard of that, where there were shootings in Ohio, were taking place. And our Board of Trustees was so paranoid, they had designed a safe room up on the roof. The administrators all occupied the 3rd floor of the library, a portion of it anyway. And if there was any trouble, if the students came protesting, if the students came with rocks or guns or whatever they thought they were going to come with, all these administrators were to go up secret doors, up the stairwells here and on the other side, and make their way over to the safe room, where they would lock the door. They had food, they had water, they had a telephone to call the state militia in there and get them out, so they didn't have to go back down through the unruly mob that they expected. I've been in that room, and but it was much later. They'd converted it to microfilm storage. Well, I'm sure there's no microfilm in there now. I wonder what is in there. Haven't been in there myself in 15 years. So they're a little paranoid around here. I think a lot of the other instructors think of me as the college historian because I know so much that's happened here. I don't talk about it much. That's just for fun there. Because if they ever wanted to fire me, I'd threaten to write a book. And no, they shun publicity at Saddleback College. Oh well, hey, it's still a great place to work. Okay. Now let me get back to our stuff and modules. Okay, here's the cat muscles up here in number 3, because it said it straddles 2 weeks, but I think I have put it down here also for today. It's the same. Okay. Uh, this does not look like the abbreviated one, does it? This is the same one. This one's not abbreviated. The one that's abbreviated is said to be condensed. I wrote that on there for you. Okay. So for right now, our most uh, important task is to be sure that you can identify them. And the actions are the same on all of the charts. Use the condensed one though when you're trying to learn the other material, the origin and the insertion. And we'll use this one for cats to get cat pictures until we get down to number 48. And then they convert over to human models, and it would be obvious to you. You'd see that, and you can continue on if you want, but it's going to be human models in just the first 48. Remember, only 13 questions use images of the cat tomorrow. 13 questions is more than I care to miss, however. Okay, so I'm going to buzz through some and take more time with others. The trapezius, I'm hopefully going to be able to
Charlie.
finish. Yeah.
It. I don't know if you'd probably answer this question, but for the pictures that show the cat muscles, are they going to be questions like name this muscle, or are they going to be like what are the actions? And
They're going to be exactly the same as for the human. What are the actions? What are the insertions? What are the origins? Name it.
okay.
13 images is 13 questions. That's all. So you're not going to have a lot of them. You're going to have some, though, of each type that you just talked about: action, name, insertion, and origin. Okay, here's the trapezius muscle starting at the back here at this point. It's triangular and comes to here. You only have to know it as trapezius. You don't have to know the parts of it. So since you don't, I'm not going to go into it again today. Okay. On the shoulder, it's high and forward. This back here is the acromio-deltoid, or just deltoid. This covering, this is trapezius. Right there where some idiot would grab you as a kid by the neck and squeeze, and it hurts like hell. Okay. Over the shoulder blade, and then to a point on the spine. The latissimus dorsi is behind the trapezius. Now this is trapezius here. But under it, behind it, is the latissimus dorsi, probably the largest, flattest muscle that you're going to see. Not the bulkiest, however, not the heaviest. Latissimus dorsi, it inserts on the humerus. It originates on the linea alba and the spine. Serratus anterior. You can't mistake the serratus anterior. It looks like a sunburst or a starburst. So that's it right here. It helps move the forearm backwards in preparation to throw a jab. Here's the latissimus dorsi rolled out of the way. You can also see a piece here of the infraspinatus. The infraspinatus. The teres major will not be asked on the cat, but it's down here. The pectoralis major and minor, sort of opposite in the human. The size-wise, pectoralis major is the smaller. It's up here like a triangular shield. Pectoralis major. Pectoralis minor is more like a strap. This muscle, the xiphohumeralis, we wouldn't ask you. If you see something over here and that is pinned, and you think it's the xiphohumeralis, first off, I told you we wouldn't ask it. So it really's got to be the pectoralis minor. Okay. 11 is nice to see here. This is the biceps brachii. The rhomboids up here looking like radiator vents. Okay. These draw the scapula together. The deltoids are number 7. They stretch from here above the triceps to this rounded structure, which is the acromial deltoid. You just know it as deltoid, please. In front of that is the trapezius. That's the trapezius. That's the trapezius. Back to the deltoid. Here was one of them, 2 of them. And the third deltoid muscle is down from the trapezius here, It's attached not to bone only, bone yes, but also it's attached to the trapezius. Now, this was the triceps, it's number 10, and immediately in front of it is the brachialis. When you expose the upper part of the shoulder blade, I say upper because of the orientation of the cat. Anatomically, it's posterior. Okay, this is the supraspinatus. Here's that infraspinatus that we just looked at. Here's the teres major that we're not going to ask on the cat. Here's, for the first time, the triceps. This is trapezius. This is trapezius split. Up here is trapezius. Even down here, although it's dark on my screen, even, I don't know about yours, probably the same. This is the serratus anterior. Okay, got a broad muscle here, rather thin and flat. Can trace it out, but I need a better picture for that. But it does actually flare out to all the digits. But broad and flat is the palmaris longus. Then we have to figure out which is the thumb side of the cat. Well, the cat's anatomical position is different than ours. You can see how it's lying on its back here, arm up, and the thumb is going to be on this side. If that's the case, this muscle must be the flexor carpi radialis, and the one down here underneath, the flexor carpi ulnaris. Flexor muscles all have two heads. So if you look and see this one, this two, okay, and it confuses you, if you remember that the carpi muscles have two heads, you'll probably get away with it. I just did the palmaris longus, sorry about that. Okay, we still have the same view on the flexor side. Okay, here's the palmaris longus. This muscle here underneath, this is the flexor carpi radialis again. The ulnaris is here and not pinned because so little of it's showing. Here's a really good view of the pronator teres. The muscle only goes about halfway at the most down the arm, and it's tended all the rest of the way. Pronator teres. This muscle at the top, we might as well take advantage of it. This is the brachialis, and the muscle down below it here in two parts, one part, two parts, is the extensor carpi radialis. The extensor carpi radialis shows from both the extensor and the flexor side. Now you need to know as many of these cold as possible so that the ones that give you trouble you can spend more time on. You can't spend more time on every one, and they're not all equally as challenging. That's the word. This is the brachioradialis here. And then below it, this one that's being pulled up, this is the extensor carpi radialis again, followed by the extensor digitorum communis, sometimes just called the extensor communis. Here was the communis again. And then the small one just below it is the extensor digitorum minimi, which only goes to the little finger or the fifth digit. Off to the side here is a muscle with two parts. You can actually see the separation, 1, 2. I don't think if I were taking a test, I'd be looking for that. However, I pick out another muscle sometimes if I don't know the one I'm looking at right away. And then I name that one, the next one, and so on down. Till I get to, in this case, 21, which is the extensor carpi ulnaris. Let's go backwards through it. Extensor carpi ulnaris, extensor digitorum minimi, extensor digitorum communis. This one here is the extensor carpi radialis. And the top one is the brachioradialis. Over here, the triceps. Way up here on the arm, way at the neck, trapezius. Down in the lower part of the forearm, in the front of it, and it's been artificially separated here. This is the deltoid, clavodeltoid. The masseter on the cat is a large rounded muscle. And it's the only muscle that we can really look at on this image. Looking at the underside of the cat, I always start dead center under the chin, right in the middle, and that's the mylohyoideus. Pass by the area for the hyoid bone, and then we're at the sternohyoideus. This muscle here, number 24, and on the other side, help close the mouth. I'm sorry, open the mouth. And they're the digastricus. You'll find some of the terms like digastricus, that's easy. You might find deltoid or deltoideus. You may find, let me think of another one, rhomboid, the rhomboids, the rhomboideus muscles. All of those are the same. No tricks being played if you see one. The external oblique here, you always know it because you can see the striations and they're going down and towards the midline. In order to see all of it, we had to lift up and move aside the latissimus dorsi. Under the latissimus dorsi, you can really see the serratus anterior fairly well there. I'm not going to give you a bonus point for this, but if I were to, what is this muscle?
Pectoralis major.
That's pretty darn close. Pectoralis major is up here. Pectoralis minor. Xiphohumeralis. Okay. The external oblique peeled back shows the internal oblique with its striations heading upwards towards the midline. Underneath that, as this has been able to be lifted here, we were able to pin for once the transverse abdominis. And then here, this is the rectus abdominis. It's not very neat. It's very difficult to peel the linea alba off. On the leg, lifted in the front here, just looking like connective tissue that it is the IT band, or the tensor fascia lata. It covers the muscle number 40, which is the vastus lateralis. And then going backwards, this is the biceps femoris. The gluteus medius and maximus. The medius is here. I always tell you it's like a thumbprint right up against the spine. And then sort of a draping behind it of a thinner muscle, which is the gluteus maximus in the cat. You're not responsible for this muscle because it's only found in the cat, the caudofemoralis. This was the biceps femoris again, over here. The sartorius on the cat occupies half of the upper thigh at the front, at the superficial level. Number 34 is sartorius. It's been bisected. You'll probably never see it without the bisection. This side is sartorius as well. The other half of the thigh is number 35, the gracilis. And this is usually bisected, and it is up here on the other side. The biceps femoris, you just saw it a bunch of times. The semitendinosus, for some reason, it gives people a little bit of trouble when they have to dissect it out. The best thing to use is your fingers. Get under this cord-like muscle. It's very strong. And it stretches from the ischial tuberosity down to the posterior of the knee. This is the semitendinosus. Biceps femoris, semitendinosus. These muscles go around the leg in the same pattern and order that they do for humans, although the muscles don't look always the same. The biceps femoris is thinner. It's like the same size as the semitendinosus. It would be here, the other here, and you'd have that typical two large muscles on the upper posterior thigh that you see in bodybuilders. Along with the semimembranosus, they make up the hamstring muscles. I'm tired of talking about the bodybuilders. Let me find one. No, not that way. That's not as good. Not a good picture, but it'll do. These are the two of the three hamstrings in the human. On the lateral side, the biceps femoris. On the medial side, the semitendinosus. Underneath, the semimembranosus. They're showing the semimembranosus here, but that doesn't give you a feeling that it stretches completely underneath these, which it does. Okay, when you open the legs and looking at the medial side of the upper thigh, okay, you have to move the covering muscles on both sides to the side. This muscle here that was covering, this was the gracilis. This is the sartorius. Sartorius. Underneath the sartorius is a large cord-like muscle. It really looks like the typical muscle that they show you in the textbook. That's the rectus femoris. Medially to it, this muscle is the vastus medialis. A little bit of the vastus lateralis shows up here, but it's not pinned because it would be inadequate to use for anything but an example while we're talking here. Okay, again the leg, muscles peeled back, the sartorius here and here, the gracilis here is covering the semimembranosus, the third hamstring. Above that, above this separation, is the adductor magnus, a series of muscles that have a sail shape of a shark's tooth. And the adductor magnus, of course, brings the leg in. The pectineus is the smallest breakaway up at the top. Little different order, never hurts. Number 45 on the front, right next to the tibia. This is the tibialis anterior. So going from anterior, let's go laterally. Going back, this is the external extensor digitorum longus. These two muscles are responsible for dorsiflexion, toes up. If you did get a cramp at night, maybe this is the best thing you can learn today. If you get a cramp, I know if I'm getting a leg cramp and I'm asleep, I will wake up almost in a sweat. I know what's coming. You do too. It is going to hurt like hell. And you've been told to move your foot in a certain way and you'll stop it. It's either dorsiflexion or it's plantar flexion. Which way do you do it? And you got no time to think. And it's dark and you're not even awake. You're just frightened a bit. Okay. Well, you have better dorsiflex. Dorsiflex. If you were to plantar flex and point the toe, that will bring it on gangbusters. Horrible, horrible. Don't want that. I just usually get down on the floor and brace for it. And okay, looking at the bottom, this is the tibialis anterior. I've got the leg bent, but the anterior is really down here. Here's the extensor digitorum longus again. And then the next one is the fibularis longus. The fibularis longus has a tendon that goes under the foot to the first metatarsal of the toe, the big toe. And by doing that, it can evert the foot. In other words, if you've got your 2 feet in front of you, take your big toes and turn them down and make your little toes come up. You're everting the foot, you're using the fibularis longus. Okay. Above that, and by above, I mean in this picture, we have the soleus and the gastrocnemius. And these are both important in plantar flexion. Okay, now it will revert over to the human models that I showed you the other day. So I want to go back to the list here to be sure you know all of these. Okay, on the arm, we have pictures of it, but the extensor pollicis, that's the hitchhiker's muscle. It will abduct the thumb Think about it. Remember, put yourself in the anatomical position, and the thumb goes outward or away, so it's abducted. The extensor retinoculatum, the bracelet of connective tissue that goes around the wrist, but it's on the extensor side on the top and the flexor side as well. Okay. For the head, these I think are fairly easy. Few people miss them. You're only going to be asked to identify these. For the eye, be sure you know these. We've gone over them twice, but the inferior oblique and superior oblique are always the ones that people have a lingering question about. Well, I've done my best to show it to you twice. At this point, if you still don't have it, it's probably going to be better for you to Google somebody else's rendition, because I'll just do it the same way again. And if you didn't get it, that's not going to help you. If you still have trouble and you can't find a good site, well, give me an email. The linea alba is down the front side of the abdomen. Oh, I don't want to do that. The lumbodorsal fascia. This is what it is right here. Okay. It's really considered to be a broad tendon of insertion. Here it is again over here. Come on, give it to me. Oh, okay, that didn't help. Okay, lumbodorsal fascia. Antagonist. Okay, as you go through the muscles, every one of the muscles has got to have a counterpart doing the opposite, with a couple of exceptions, of course. Here's an exception, one that doesn't have an antagonist. Squint your eyes, and then just stop squinting. It goes back. Most of the sphincter muscles, the same way. Orbicularis oculi, orbicularis oris, they don't have antagonists. But when you have motion or an action or a function that has to be countered by another muscle, that muscle is always an antagonist. As you go through, think of what's an antagonist to this. And if you can do that for, up to 2/3 of the muscles, you have got it down. The whole test. Even though how many antagonistic muscle groups are there is a very small part of the test, but being able to come up with that information while you're studying will probably ultimately help you out a lot. Same thing with synergist, but know that the diaphragm, again, is the prime mover of respiration. Get the intercostals, the externals and the internals straight. The externals are for breathing in, they raise the rib cage. The internals are for forced exhalation. Be sure to know what are the four rotator cuff muscles. Know the four quadriceps, and then the three hamstrings. Actually, if you learn those as a group or as three separate groups, I think it makes it easier. Okay. How are you going to do
Great.
tomorrow? Anybody else?
I hope I do okay.
Yep, I want you to. Okay. The test, 1 o'clock. You can wander in, say, until 1:30. Okay. So you don't have to, you know, race to get home because you're someplace else and you got hit with a light or something. You know, don't worry about that. What I usually do when I see somebody hasn't started, I make a mail list and get ready to send it, but I wait and I wait, and then somebody starts the test. I take them off the list, and when I get to 1:30, I send a list and it says, "Please start the test now." And so far, everybody's been there eventually. Okay. You know, the bones probably seem easier, but the bones had a different problem. They were first. They were first. You weren't used to memorizing so much stuff. At least if we had started with the muscles, I think we'd had a riot on our hands here. Okay. Get past this test tomorrow. Get past well, and you'll find out that it's pretty smooth sailing after that. Some people, for some reason, fall apart. I know, but I don't think it's going to be you. Okay. If you have any questions, comments that you want to share,
Charlie?
Mike,
Yeah, what exactly do you mean by smooth sailing?
you're not expecting a whole bunch of waves and things like that. You know, you're not expecting the boat to overturn. Uh, Smooth sailing, though, that could be smooth water and you're not going anywhere. Okay. It's still up to you. Uh, it's up to you.
Got it.
When I was in the Galapagos, I was on a 16 passenger boat and they pull up the anchor at night to travel from one of the islands to the next. And the water, depending on the direction you're going, but usually the water is so rough. It hits the boat, throws it into the air, throws you out of your bunk. You can't use the restroom. You can't do anything. You just lie there, banging, banging, banging. And then, believe it or not, you go to sleep and you're just being tossed around. That was not smooth sailing. Okay. Uh, if you have a question, definitely stay because I'll stay. If you don't have a question, definitely go and study when you can or get ready to study. Okay. I'll send out an email about the change for the next lecture test, which actually, I mean, having thought it through, I always pick what I hope is the best option for you, and I think that this will work. Actually, can work to your benefit. Okay, but forget about that right now. The important thing is the test tomorrow. After that, this weekend, I will post all of the material for next week for you ahead of time. Okay, so to some of you, goodbye.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you,
Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie. Have a good weekend.
Okay.
Thanks, Charlie. See you tomorrow.
Okay.